Welcome back, everyone. We are so excited to be on this continuing journey through the relentless courage of a scared child. And this week, everything changes. Tana meets me and then tortures me for about the first 18 months of our relationship. And, you know, we have so many great reviews. There's reviews from Australia and from London. But I want to read a review that is actually one of our winners. So Susan from Denver, this podcast is full of insightful wisdom for a variety of aspects that you may not connect to brain health. So refreshing to know they're looking into new ways to diagnose and treat various brain issues.
Awesome, Susan.
Love it.
So Susan gets either The End of Mental Illness or my new book. We'll sign those. So you can have the Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, or you can have the cookbook, your choice. So let us know.
Well, we're always grateful. And whatever you learn, if you write it down, take a picture of it, post it on any of your social media sites, and then leave us a review at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. We'll enter you into a drawing to win one of our books. We are so grateful. So the year is 2005. At the end of 2005, we meet each other.
Right.
Online.
Well, we left off with sort of a cliffhanger story, and life was a little crazy. So we're not going to go into all of that. Lots happens in the book between the Playboy cancer story and me meeting you, and it's not all good. Some of it's very good, but there's a lot of ups and downs during that time. And then I meet you. Yes.
And then you meet me, and our first formal date was January 1st, 2006. We sort of think of that as our anniversary, and we actually forget our real anniversary.
It's terrible. We both forget our real anniversary.
A lot.
I mean, January 1st is easy to remember.
So we remember that. And so 15 years ago.
Yeah. I totally didn't trust you.
And I was like really excited.
Yeah, I almost canceled my first date.
To meet you. I'd been divorced 6 years and had a couple of relationships that, you know, were fine, but they weren't awesome. And then I meet you, and you are beautiful, you're smart, you're funny. My heart goes pitter patter, and then you keep pushing me away, pushing me away.
Well, you kept trying to marry me, I didn't
ask you to marry me.
You did pretty quick. You were pretty serious, pretty quick, and it just, you were so nice, and I didn't trust it. It's like I kept waiting for the other shoe to fall. There's no way I trusted that you were that nice. Now,
I should have been way more anxious than I was.
Yeah.
About you.
I tried to tell you. I was helping you. I tried to tell you I am doing you a favor. Did I not? You
did. And you were wrong. Because ultimately being married to you is the best decision I've made.
Aww.
So, you know, I sort of had a sense that you were the one. And then you kept going away. But, you know, there are a couple of really pivotal parts.
Yeah.
After we met, because this is just how I am, I scanned you. Like 2.5 weeks later, I'm like, you haven't seen the clinic. Don't you want to see the clinic?
And I'm like, and you want to see my naked brain. I did give you credit for most original line. Yeah. I'd heard a lot of lines, and that one was very original.
And during our first date, I sort of thought you had ADD.
I did not have ADD.
You totally had ADD your whole life. Your mother has ADD from hell.
And I thought ADD was total nonsense, an excuse to fail, but not try.
And when I sort of just ask questions.
You're like, oh, but you drink 2 pots of coffee every day. And in your words, you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a hard 2-hour workout so you can quote unquote clear the cobwebs. And I'm like, yeah, so. And you work in a trauma unit where it's like the most intense unit in the hospital.
And a lot of trauma doctors are ADD because they just thrive on the dopamine hit. And so when I scanned you, showed, yes, indeed, you did have a little bit, but then your brain had been hurt.
Yeah, which I also
And-
thought was crazy.
But I'm like, well, have you ever had a brain injury? Now she works on a neurosurgical ICU unit, so she thinks you have to have like
That
a
means
broken
like,
skull.
yeah, you cracked your skull open, you've got
Except
a brain in your brain,
when I asked
you're in a
her,
coma.
and she said no. And then I asked her again, and she said, well, I was 25 and my sister fell asleep at the wheel and we were going 75 miles an hour and she fell asleep and the car flipped 3 times. And the roof
almost got
of
hit
the
by a
car was smashed in.
Yeah.
And you lived only because you were reclined.
I was reclined, yeah. And I walked away. So I guess I was just so grateful that I walked away from it. I mean, I remember being jostled back and forth. But I think I hit
But
my
if you
head
just
on the,
think of your brain is soft, your skull is hard, your skull has sharp bony ridges, those forces
Yeah.
as your brain spinning.
well,
and
it
then
makes
stopping.
sense. I mean, as a nurse, I'm like, we arrest people for shaken baby syndrome, right? So, for a reason, but but up until then, that never made sense to me because I'm thinking brain injury means you're in a coma. So, those types of things. So,
And you were not. And I could see evidence on.
yeah, I
the
could see a
scan.
little dent. I'm like, what the heck is that?
Yeah. And sometimes that can go with mood instability or irritability. Not that anyone would ever notice that.
As long as I'm not in line. I can't be in line. I hate being in line. And I don't like when construction is late on my house.
But even despite that, you had a beautiful brain. And one of the first things I said is, I hope they didn't put you on Prozac.
Yeah. And I literally, my jaw hit the top. I'm like, why? And he said, because he's like, there are probably medications that would have helped you, but that wouldn't be one I would suspect did. He said, you said you were depressed. Did they put you on Prozac? And I'm like, they did. And it almost ruined my life. And I did some crazy stuff on Prozac. And so, I'm just lucky that whether it was the grace of God or I still had some, semblance of control left enough to just like not totally ruin my life, but it could have ruined my life. And so you're like, and I'm like, why would you not put me on Prozac? And then you sort of show me my brain scan. You're like, this part of your brain is sleepy, your frontal lobes. And what Prozac does is it increases serotonin. It's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it increases the available serotonin, which drops your frontal lobes, but yours are already sleepy. So if you put someone on something that drops their frontal lobes and their frontal lobes are already sleepy, that increases impulsivity and it affects their judgment. And it's the executive center of their brain. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Like my whole life made sense. Like that whole period of time where I was like, why do I just keep doing stupid things and I don't care? Like the weird part was it wasn't doing stupid things wasn't even the craziest part. It was the not caring because that's not like me. I'm an anxious person. Like, me, I'm a very anxious person.
Yes.
So it did not
for the end of the world.
I prepare for everything. Like in school, I was like, everything had to be turned in way early. So all of a sudden I just didn't care. And for that, and what went off Prozac, it went away. And so I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And I remember thinking that psychiatrist that put me on that, and he had doubled my dose when I complained that I didn't feel right. Like he should have been arrested for not actually like paying attention.
Taught not to look.
Okay, well, he shouldn't have been taught that. I'm sorry, I'm a patient.
So
from a patient's perspective.
Judgmental dragon
Yes,
roaring in his head. Again.
Absolutely.
Rah!
When it ruins your life, yes, I get to say that. Yes, I do. Anybody out there feel this way? Anybody else out there experience this? Please leave a comment. I want to know because I know I'm not the only one.
You are not.
Yes.
So lots of insights. And another thing you told me was since the age of 4, you had upper and lower GIs. And I'm like, well, what happened at 4? And nothing.
My standard response was nothing. Everything was fine.
And then I learned your uncle was
Yeah,
murdered
you're like
in a
really
drug deal.
sneaky. Like you're super sneaky.
Oh
okay.
no, I have a book.
Yeah, don't date a shrink.
Called The Brain in Love that I actually wrote when we were dating. The Brain in Love, and there's chapter 6. It's called Seeing the Dead Animals Around the Oasis of Love. It's actually, if you're dating.
And you didn't run when you met me?
It's actually, when you're dating, how to screen people for brain health, emotional health issues. Are they going to be a good partner or not? Well, for me, I have this rescue thing, which you hate because,
I hate because I don't think of myself and I don't think of
people.
myself as a victim either. So
you're not a victim.
Yeah.
But I thought
that's why I kept pushing,
because I cared about you, that I could be helpful to you. And so when I learned really the stories in the Relentless Courage,
like I said, you're sneaky about getting information.
That with help, you could just be even more amazing than I already thought you were. And one of my first gifts to you was EMDR.
Well, but let's go back to the story, because you're like, what happened at 4? Like you were having upper and lower GIs. That doesn't make sense. And then you found out that, my uncle was murdered and there was other stuff going on. And my dad was coming and going and doing drugs and, whatever. There was a lot of stuff that was, and that's how I said it to you. I'm like, yeah, but it was just like, what happens to everybody, right? It's like garden variety dysfunctional. And so, and you're like, and you had that look right there. And you're like, no, that's not like, no. You're like, so 2 weeks after this incident where your uncle was murdered and there's screaming and chaos and, craziness in your house and you get pushed away and you feel sort of rejected, you start having these GI issues. And I was sick all the time. I mean, I was always on antibiotics.
Well, and most people don't know serotonin that helps you feel normal is wildly important to your gut. And it gives you a sense of safety that you can eat these foods or you can digest these foods. So think serotonin and safety. And you had no safety at the time.
No, I did not.
You had no safety. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how important trauma therapy is to being well. Did you learn anything besides don't marry a psychiatrist? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites. Leave us a comment, question, or a review at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.